The room was cold, but Lena Morrison didn't flinch. Rows of highly decorated officers lined the long table, their uniforms starched, their ribbons gleaming. The air was thick with authority, every word spoken measured, every movement deliberate. And there she sat, quietly, in a plain black naval intelligence uniform that bore no medals, no name tag, not even a rank. She looked out of place, a civilian among wolves. But Admiral Thomas Beckett kept glancing her way. Lieutenant Commander Yarrick, "Run us through the op outline again," Beckett ordered, his voice gravelly from years of shouting commands across the ocean and battlefield alike. The holographic display flickered on. A three-dimensional blueprint of a paramilitary compound hovered above the table. It was a known rogue facility in Eastern Europe, tied to illegal weapons transfers and rumored human trafficking. Intelligence confirmed American hostages were being held underground. The objective, Yarrick began, is to extract 4 hostages, eliminate any high-value threats, and gather intel on their logistics chain. We've mapped their surface patrols, but interior layouts remain uncertain. Then how the hell are we going in blind? Barked Rear Admiral Winslow, frowning. We have one possible solution, Beckett said, shifting his attention again. To Lena. The room went silent. Lena stood up slowly. She didn't need notes or a screen. Her mind was the server. Her voice was soft, yet it cut through the room with surgical precision. They're running a decentralized comms network using modified Starlink architecture. It's traceable only through inconsistencies in packet delays. I've isolated a signal loop in their subfrequencies. Given a secure uplink, I can reach their local grid and feed the team live schematics. There was a pause. Several officers glanced at one another, visibly confused. Who is this? Winslow asked, gesturing toward her. Beckett sighed, folding his arms. Lena Morrison, civilian contractor. Codename, Wildcard. Wildcard? Winslow scoffed. Sir, with respect, this operation requires military precision. We don't have time for untested. She's not untested, Beckett interrupted firmly. She's the reason the Black Sea incident didn't end in nuclear fallout. That data breach at FOB Orion last year? She stopped it, alone. Lena said nothing. She didn't need to dot another officer. Commander Reyes leaned forward skeptically. And what's her field experience? Beckett hesitated a second, just long enough for Lena to speak. Classified, she replied without blinking. The answer wasn't meant to boast. It was fact. The truth was, even Beckett didn't know the full extent of what she'd been through. Only fragments. There were rumors that she once operated inside a deep war zone under a false name, that she went missing for weeks and reappeared with encrypted files that changed the course of an entire covert war. But nothing was ever confirmed. She didn't speak of her past, not even when pressed. What no one in that room could see hidden. Beneath the layers of black fabric and composure were the long, pale scars that traced down her side. Jagged lines over her ribs, remnants of a moment when steel had torn flesh and fire had burned air. Scars from a time the Navy had chosen to forget. Admiral Beckett cleared his throat. She accompanied the team. She operated from a mobile, based near the LZ. Her decisions are to be treated as tactical overrides where cyber or intel conflict with command. It wasn't a request. Silence followed. Then reluctant nods. As the briefing dispersed, Lena gathered her minimal gear. A sleek laptop case, a tablet, and a single pistol. She didn't wear a sidearm out of habit. She carried it because she'd once needed it more than breath. As she moved through the hall, one of the younger officers caught up to her. Lieutenant Drew Wallace, a sharp, clean-cut tech officer who'd aim-cut tech officer, heard whispers about her but never met her face-to-face. Wildcard, he said, almost nervously. Can I ask why you? She didn't stop walking, because no one else would go in, without knowing if they'd come back. She replied quietly. That stopped him. She turned slightly, her eyes catching his light brown, but shadowed with something far older than her 30 years. Everyone here plans missions like chess games. I play like it's survival. He watched her walk away, unsure whether to be afraid or inspired. Later that night, Lena sat in a quiet hangar alone, prepping a portable uplink device by hand. Her fingers moved with mechanical efficiency, but her thoughts wandered. She recalled the moment a foreign bullet ripped through her side years ago. The heat, the scream she bit down, the sound of her own breath crackling in blood. She'd been left behind back then, but she had crawled her way back through fire, pain, and betrayal. No medal ever arrived. No one welcomed her home. So when Beckett asked her to return to the field, she didn't hesitate. She wasn't there for the Navy. She was there for the ones who would be left behind, just like she had been. And this time, she'd make sure no one was. The Black Hawk helicopter sliced through the night sky, its blades a whisper in the darkness over the rugged mountain terrain of Eastern Europe. Inside, Lena Morrison sat quietly among the armored team, eyes locked on the screen in her lap. The others wore combat gear, weapons strapped tight to their chests. Lena wore the same black uniform, but no one expected her to fire a weapon. She wasn't here to shoot. She was here to see what no one else could. We're 2 clicks out, barked Sergeant Tovey, the mission lead. Stay sharp. We breach in 5. The team nodded. Tovey eyed Lena cautiously. You good? Ready, she said calmly, not looking up. Her fingers danced over the keyboard, launching a silent attack into the enemy's satellite relay. A cascade of code streamed across the display as she sought vulnerabilities in their encrypted mesh system. They hadn't seen her coming yet. This was irrelevant. Digital chaos was where Lena lived. The team hit the ground in darkness. Trees loomed around them, and the cold air bit at exposed skin. Lena stayed behind in the mobile command truck, tucked behind the tree line with the technician and radio officer. From here, she'd feed the team live data and reroute the surveillance drones. But something was wrong. The signal's bouncing, Lena muttered, narrowing her eyes. They've changed frequency mid-transmission. That's not supposed to happen. Tovey's voice crackled through the radio. We're already inside the perimeter. Can you still see internal routes? Lena hesitated. She could lie and say yes, but her gut screamed otherwise. Negative, she replied. You've been made. Before the last syllable left her mouth, an explosion rocked the feed. The ambush was swift, brutal. Bullets tore through the compound's main entrance. Smoke grenades clouded the air. From her station, Lena watched as security feeds died one by one, taken out systematically. The enemy knew they were there, but they didn't know about her. She leapt from the truck with her tablet in hand and sprinted toward the secondary relay point hidden among the rocks. She set up the backup system, heart pounding, ribs aching under the weight of her gear. The cold wind cut through her, but her focus remained razor sharp. A line of code refused to compile encrypted in a dead dialect from a rival nation-state. Lena recognized it instantly. This wasn't just a hostage camp. This was a proxy operation. Her eyes widened. Command, this is Wildcard, she radioed. You've walked into something far bigger. This compound's not just a hideout, it's a live hub for covert ops. If you go loud, they'll trigger data destruction and kill the hostages. Too late for subtlety, Tovey responded, voice strained through gunfire. 1 man down. 2 pinned. Need an exit now. She worked furiously, fingers trembling as she bypassed the core firewall and activated a hidden server cluster. A map appeared: hidden doors, backup tunnels, enemy positions. She patched it directly into the team's HUD. Exit route at grid C7. There's a drainage shaft beneath the west barracks. Go now. The teen moved as she guided them, her voice steady despite the chaos. But just as she stabilized the data feed, the screen flickered. A shadow loomed. Lena turned and saw a lone enemy fighter, weapon raised. He fired. Pain exploded in her side. She fell back, gasping. Blood soaked her black uniform as heat radiated through her ribs. The bullet had torn into her same side, same place as years ago. A cruel echo. The enemy advanced, but her hand didn't tremble. She fired one shot. He dropped. She crawled to the device, blood trailing behind her, and finished the upload. Her vision swam, but she stayed conscious long enough to watch the team breach the hostage cell. One by one, civilians were freed, shielded by the same men who once doubted her. Minutes later, the evac chopper roared overhead. By the time the team reached her location, Lena was slumped against a tree, her face pale, her shirt clinging to the wound. Sergeant Tovey knelt beside her, checking the bleeding. "You're gonna make it," he said, voice softer than she expected. She didn't answer. Instead, she handed him the tablet. Files uploaded. "They need to see it," she whispered. He looked at the screen. What he saw made his jaw tighten. "You're a damn ghost, Morrison," he muttered, shaking his head. As the chopper lifted off with Lena inside, the team watched from the ground. None of them spoke. She had saved them, not just from bullets, but from walking blind into a war they didn't understand. Back in the air, the medic pressed gauze to her side. "You awake?" Lena nodded faintly. "Who the hell trained you?" he asked. Her lips curled in the faintest trace of a smile. "No one," she said. "I trained myself." And then she closed her eyes, not in surrender, but in survival. The whir of hospital machinery was constant, steady, sterile, and soulless. Lena Morrison lay motionless beneath the white fluorescent lights of Walter Reed Medical Center. A deep crimson stain still shadowed the dressing over her side. Tubes pumped fluids into her veins, machines tracked her every heartbeat, and somewhere behind the wall, guards stood outside her door. She'd survived. Again, but there were no flowers. No visitors. No fanfare. A nurse entered quietly, clipboard in hand, glancing once at the patient. She hesitated. Everyone had heard whispers. The woman from the field, the one who hacked the enemy blind while bleeding out. She had saved the entire team. But Lena's name wasn't even on the roster. She had been admitted under a temporary alias. The nurse cleared her throat. "Ms. Lang, your vitals are steady. We'll keep monitoring for infection. Is there anything you need?" Lena's eyes opened slowly, calm and steady. "No." Her voice was barely a whisper, but firm. She didn't want conversation. She didn't want pity. And she definitely didn't want questions. The nurse nodded and left. 3 days passed. No commanding officer visited. No press release was issued. Lena remained confined to a quiet room with a window facing a blank concrete wall. She spent her hours reading classified intelligence reports and analyzing mission data on a secure tablet she requested the moment she could sit up. Her mind couldn't afford rest. It never could. Her wound ached constantly. The bullet had missed her lung by an inch, but the rib, already weakened from an older injury, had cracked straight through. Doctors had to remove a fragment. Now, jagged sutures curved around her side, like threads holding her together. Each morning, she peeled back the gauze and studied the scar. It wasn't new. It was layered directly over an older one. A ghost of a past injury the Navy never documented. One she never told anyone about. One that still haunted her. Back then, no medevac came. No teammates waited. She had survived that wound in the middle of nowhere with a broken rib. A cracked radio, and nothing but grit. And after crawling 5 miles through hostile jungle, they still questioned her loyalty. That betrayal had taught her everything she needed to know. Now here she was bleeding for them again, and still forgotten. On the 5th day, a visitor finally came. Admiral Beckett entered without knocking, his uniform pristine, his presence commanding. He paused just inside the door, taking in the sight of her wrapped in bandages. Eyes clear but unreadable. "You look better than your file says," he muttered. "Files rarely get it right," Lena said without looking up. He approached slowly, the click of his shoes echoing. "You disobeyed my extraction order. I recalculated based on field intelligence. Orders would have gotten the hostages killed." Beckett's jaw tightened. He didn't argue, because she was right. He pulled a chair across from her and sat down. For a moment, they said nothing. Then he leaned forward, elbows on knees. "Why? Didn't you report the older injury on your record?" Lena's eyes flicked toward him, sharp and guarded. "You didn't ask." "That's not an answer." She set down the tablet. "In 2018, I was embedded in an off-the-books operation in South Sudan. Our communications failed. I was presumed dead." "I wasn't. I was just inconvenient." Beckett frowned. "I got back on my own. By the time I returned, they'd sealed the op and moved on. No debrief, no medal, just silence. So I learned to work in silence." She lifted her shirt slowly, revealing the scars layered, deep, twisted like a story that refused to heal properly. Beckett stared, speechless. He had seen war wounds before burns, gunshots, trauma. But something about those scars made him sit back in his chair like he'd just been punched. "That bullet, it hit the same place as before?" he asked. Lena nodded. "Same rib, same side, same silence." Beckett's face darkened. "You should have been recognized years ago." "I'm not here for recognition," Lena said. "I'm here to make sure no one else gets left behind." There it was, the truth behind her silence. The wound wasn't just physical. It was a vow. Before Beckett could speak again, her monitor beeped. The nurse peeked in, then froze, seeing the Admiral. He stood, smoothing his jacket. "You'll be cleared in a week," he said. "But this time, you won't be buried in a report. I'm going to make sure Washington hears your name." Lena tilted her head. "And if they don't like what they hear?" Beckett's expression shifted, half Admiral, half soldier. "Then we make them listen." As he turned to leave, Lena leaned back against the pillow, her side throbbing, her ribs burning. But for the first time in a long time, she felt seen. Not completely, not enough to forget, but maybe enough to keep going. Outside, rain began to fall light, steady, like a cleansing. Inside her something stirred. This war wasn't over, not the one on the battlefield, and not the one behind closed doors. The auditorium gleamed with ceremonial polish flags draped, brass instruments in tune, and uniformed officers lined like statues. The official mission debrief and honors presentation for Operation Fracture was a high-profile event. Cameras flashed. Reporters waited for sound bites. Families of rescued hostages filled the rows. But Lena Morrison wasn't seated on stage. She sat in the 3rd row from the back, wearing a borrowed navy blazer 2 sizes too large, one hand pressed discreetly against her healing side. No spotlight, no introduction, just silence. Up on stage, Admiral Beckett stood at the podium, voice proud and rehearsed. "Against overwhelming odds," he declared, "our team executed a flawless hostage recovery with precision and courage. The mission was a success because of teamwork, discipline, and decisive leadership." He paused, gaze sweeping the room. "Our heroes deserve recognition." Applause thundered as medals were pinned onto the uniforms of Sergeant Tovey and the young Surviving strike team. Commendations were given. Words like valor, bravery, and duty echoed through the speakers. Lena's name was never spoken. Not once. She didn't frown, didn't flinch. She sat completely still, a practiced statue in a room full of pageantry. Beside her, Lieutenant Drew Wallace leaned in and whispered, "This is bull. You were the reason they even made it out alive." Lena didn't respond. In the Navy, things like this weren't unusual. Decisions were often rewritten. Stories retold in ways that served the chain of command better than the truth. She had lived it before, but this time something was different. The Admiral had promised she wouldn't be erased again. And yet here she sat, erased. After the ceremony, officers gathered near the front for interviews and photo ops. Families cheered. Medals glinted under camera lights. Tovey caught sight of Lena as she passed quietly toward the exit. He stepped away from the crowd and stopped her. "Why didn't you go up?" he asked. "They didn't call me." His face tightened. "You saved my life. You would have done the same." "No," he said firmly. "I wouldn't have seen what you saw. I wouldn't have made it out without you." She gave him a half-smile. "Then maybe remember that when they try to forget me." She kept walking. Outside, the wind was cool. Lena stood alone at the edge of the parking lot, overlooking the Navy Memorial. Behind her, laughter and applause echoed. Ahead, the world moved on. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. A message from Admiral Beckett. "Meet me HQ, 1700. She didn't reply. She didn't need to. She just walked. Headquarters felt colder than usual. Beckett's office overlooked the Potomac, sunlight filtering through the blinds in sharp golden bars. When Lena entered, he stood with his back to her, hands folded behind him. "You said I wouldn't be erased," she said flatly. Beckett turned, his face unreadable. "I fought for your name to be on that list," he said. "They removed it." Said your actions, while effective, were outside the approved engagement protocols. Because I saved people? Because you broke the rules doing it. Lena stepped forward, anger creeping into her voice. "So let me guess the story. Now is that the cyber intervention was automated. That no one was bleeding behind the firewall while making split-second decisions. They're trying to protect operational integrity. They're protecting themselves." Beckett didn't argue. He simply sat down and slid a folder across the desk. Lena opened it. Her eyes scanned the document. A reassignment order temporary. Suspension from fieldwork. Review pending. She laughed under her breath. "They're grounding me? They're silencing you." Beckett leaned forward. "You made too many people nervous. You didn't just break into an enemy system. You exposed the fact that someone on our side allowed that system to exist. The proxy intel you uncovered? It connects to classified U.S. weapons routing. And they'd rather ignore it than fix it." He nodded grimly. "This wasn't just a rescue mission, Lena. You walked straight into a firestorm." She closed the folder. "I've walked into worse." Beckett studied her. "I tried to protect you." "No," she corrected. "You tried. To protect your reputation. You didn't silence them. You just watched it happen." A long silence hung between them. Finally, he said, "There's another way. I'll authorize a private briefing. Pentagon level. You show them what you found. Make them see." She looked out the window. The sun reflected off the water, distant and unreachable. "They won't listen to me." "Maybe not," Beckett said. "But they'll listen to the truth if it hurts enough." Lena stood and tucked the folder under her arm. "I don't need medals. I don't need ceremonies. But if I find out they're covering up enemy ties to our own systems, you'll burn them down?" She looked him square in the eyes. "No, I'll expose them. Quietly, completely, and with precision. Just like she did everything else." She left the office, walking past the flag-lined halls. No one looked her way. No one knew what she had just been told. But somewhere deep inside her, a switch had flipped. She wasn't just fighting for those hostages anymore. She was fighting for the truth. Even if the Navy didn't want it. Even if it cost her everything. 3 weeks passed. Lena Morrison was officially on leave, but the truth felt more like exile. Her access to naval intelligence systems was suspended. Her clearance had been downgraded. She spent her time quietly analyzing the data she'd smuggled out before they locked her down. Every night, she walked the quiet back streets of Arlington, earbuds in, hood up. She told herself she didn't miss it, the adrenaline, the war room tension, but that was a lie. Her ribs still ached when she inhaled too fast. Her scar throbbed like a phantom pulse, reminding her what they wanted to forget. Then one morning, everything changed. A knock came at her apartment door. She didn't answer. No one knocked unless it was trouble. The knock came again 3. Sharp raps, 1 pause, then 2 more. A military code. She opened it cautiously. Lieutenant Drew Wallace stood outside, out of uniform, breathless. "They're being hit again," he said. "Worse than before." She let him in without a word. He handed her a secure thumb drive. Encrypted breach reports from last 24 hours. Someone's wormed through 3 different Navy firewalls. Deep. Access fleet deployments, drone targeting, offshore comms, everything. "Where'd you get this?" she asked. "From a friend inside Cyber Command who still believes in you." She plugged the drive into her offline terminal, decrypting layer after layer with practiced ease. As the data opened, her face tensed. Breach wasn't just bad, it was surgical. The hacker hadn't stolen anything flashy. Instead, they'd left time delay scripts hidden in U.S. systems. Traps, designed to trigger months from now during routine maintenance cycles. It was a setup for a silent collapse. "Whoever this is," she muttered, "they're better than before. Cleaner, faster." Wallace shifted nervously. "You think it's the same group?" She shook her head. "No, it's someone worse. Someone who learned from the last breach." Her fingers flew across the keyboard as she traced packet trails, jumping from Seoul to Lagos to Iceland. One trace line pulsed slower than the rest. She zoomed in, then paused. Buried in the traffic was a code signature. Familiar. Her eyes narrowed. "This shouldn't exist. What is it?" "A file fragment I embedded inside the rogue proxy network at the enemy compound during Operation Fracture. It was a signature trap meant to identify anyone using their infrastructure." "You're saying someone inside our system is using code from that mission?" Lena didn't answer. She already knew. Someone inside the Navy had replicated the enemy's infrastructure, and now they were using it. Within hours, she was back at Navy headquarters, this time under escort. Beckett met her in the classified tech wing, arms crossed, eyes weary. "You broke protocol by accessing that data," he said. "I broke protocol to stop an attack you don't even know is coming." He sighed. "Then tell me what you found." She loaded her terminal and projected the data. "This isn't a foreign breach. It's a false flag. Someone on the inside used our previous mission Intel My code to create vulnerabilities in our own systems. They're building failure points and blaming it on leftover enemy infrastructure." "You're saying we have a traitor?" "I'm saying someone's repurposing covert data for internal sabotage." Beckett watched her closely. "Why would anyone do that?" Lena gave him a hard look. "Cover tracks, shift blame, redirect funding, create artificial crises, and then solve them to appear like heroes." Beckett leaned back. "Do you have a name?" "No, but I have a direction." She pulled up a real-time feed showing a Navy contractor node pinging ghost servers. Overseas servers only she had mapped. Beckett's face hardened. Someone wants another war. Lena nodded. And this time, they want it to look like it's already started. He paced the room, thinking fast. You'll need full clearance. I want field access, remote uplink. And I want full control over the trace program I built. Done, he said without hesitation. And one more thing. She added, when I find them, I don't want to be ordered to stand down. Beckett met her eyes. No one's going to stop you this time. Within hours, Lena was reactivated. A stealth van became her mobile base. Wallace joined as her technical liaison. From a parking structure near D.C., she launched the trace silent, elegant, and lethal. The code danced. Every click brought her closer. She found fragments of voice logs, broken conversations, transaction records. The trail led not overseas, but to a military contractor embedded at Norfolk Naval Base. A name surfaced. Elias Rennick, a cybersecurity expert, former Navy, dishonorably discharged, quietly rehired by a private firm. Untraceable until now, she pulled up his recent activity. One log made her freeze. Inbound data packet. Morrison_sig.x. He was watching her. Or worse, testing her. Wallace, she said, eyes locked on the screen. We need to move, now. What's happening? I'm not the hunter anymore. I'm the bait, he stared. You think he's going to come after you? She closed the laptop, her voice low. No, he already has. The underground command bunker beneath Naval Cyber HQ buzzed with activity. Lights blinked across massive server walls. Officers barked orders into headsets. But in the center of the storm sat Lena Morrison, calm and focused, her fingers gliding. Across the console, she had traced the breach pattern to its core. Elias Rennick's network was buried beneath layers of false identities and redirected servers. But he'd made one mistake, using her signature to mask his sabotage. That trap code, the same one she'd planted during Operation Fracture, had turned against him. Now, Lena had a location. He's in the building, she told Lieutenant Wallace, barely above a whisper. He accessed a local node 10 minutes ago, disguised as internal diagnostics. Wallace's eyes widened. You mean he's physically here? She nodded. Watching. Listening. Possibly armed. Beckett stormed into the room moments later, flanked by 2 armed security officers. Where is he? He demanded. Lena pointed to a live heat map on her screen. Sublevel 3. Server room C. He's not just hacking us, he's backdooring our fleet logistics in real time. If we don't stop him now, he'll trigger a chain of false alerts that could scramble half the Pacific. Beckett turned to his men. Lock it down. I want him alive. But Lena stood. No, I'll go. He frowned. You're not cleared for. I'm the reason he's here, she snapped. He used my code to do this. He thinks I won't show up. Beckett hesitated, then relented. Take a vest and back up. I don't need backup. She grabbed her sidearm, slipped on a lightweight Kevlar vest, and headed for the elevator. Wallace tried to follow, but she waved him off. This is between me and him. The server room was dark, cold, filled with the low hum of data pulsing through machines. Lena stepped inside, gun drawn, eyes scanning the rows of black towers. Red lights blinked overhead. The floor vibrated with power. A voice echoed from the far side. You're better than they said, Morrison. Quieter. Smarter. Elias Rennick emerged from behind a pillar-tall, lean face shadowed under a ball cap. He held a small tablet in one hand and a sidearm in the other. I always wondered who wrote that beautiful code at the compound, he said. The Morrison. Signature. So elegant. Took me days to dismantle. Too bad you didn't dismantle all of it, Lena replied, stepping closer. He smirked. You shouldn't be here. I'm always where I shouldn't be. His eyes narrowed. They'll silence you, you know. Just like they tried before. You're too honest, too clean. I don't like truth-tellers. I don't need their permission, she said, just their bandwidth. With a flick of her wrist, she activated a small transmitter on her belt. Instantly, her voice and his were transmitted to the command center above. Beckett was listening. Why'd you do it, Rennick? She asked. He shrugged. Because they made me. Just like they're using you now. I offered them a crisis they could solve, just enough chaos to justify the next round of military contracts. You think they want peace? They want profit. I just gave them the excuse. And the hostages? The attack on our own systems? Acceptable sacrifices. Lena stepped closer, lowering her weapon slightly. You used me, she said. You used my pain. He tilted his head. Did I? Or did they? Lena didn't answer. She reached down and slowly pulled her vest aside. Then her shirt. The scar stretched over her ribs, raw and unmistakable. Rennick's smug expression faded. You bled for them, he said softly. She nodded. Twice. Why? Because someone had to make sure people came home. Behind her, a click echoed. Beckett stood at the door, weapon raised, officers behind him. Drop it, Elias. Rennick didn't resist. He simply stared at Lena with something between admiration and regret. You could have joined me, he said, letting the gun fall. I did, she replied. Just not on your side. An hour later, back in the command center, Lena stood alone. As Rennick was led away in cuffs, Beckett approached slowly. You should have waited for backup. If I had, he would have erased everything. You risked your life. I always do. He looked at her, truly looked at her, and said nothing. Instead, he gestured to a private room down the hall. She followed. Inside, he closed the door and said the words he hadn't said in months. I was wrong. She sat, silent. You should have been commended from the start. The mission, the breach, the silence. You carried it all. She didn't reply. I thought keeping you quiet would protect you, he continued. But all I did was bury the truth with you. She finally looked up. And now? He reached into a drawer and pulled out a small black box. Inside, a medal, distinguished. Service Cross. Official. Engraved. For Operation Fracture, he said. Your name's back on the record. She stared at it, unmoving. I don't need that, she said. I know. But it's not about what you need anymore. It's about what we owe you. A beat of silence. Then she stood and walked to the door. Before exiting, she paused. If the Navy forgets again, she said without turning, I won't remind them next time. And with that, she left the medal on the table and walked out. The Admiral sat in silence. For the first time, he understood. She hadn't shown the scar to prove pain. She'd shown it to prove she was still here. 2 weeks after Elias Rennick was taken into custody, a memo quietly circulated through the Department of Defense. It bore a red stamp, declassified, and inside was a bombshell. Full transcripts, video feeds, and communications logs from Operation Fracture, including Lena Morrison's exact role. By morning, the story had exploded. The headlines were relentless. Unsung naval intelligence analyst saved dozens and was silenced. Code, courage, and betrayal. The woman behind Operation Fracture. Why was Lena Morrison's name left off the medal list? Major news outlets dug deep. They uncovered the bullet wound she suffered while protecting a Marine, the sabotage of her code, the blocked commendations, the months of silence, and above all, the photograph, grainy but unmistakable, of Lena lifting her shirt in front of Admiral Beckett to reveal her scars. That image became iconic. Overnight. Not for its shock value. But for its truth. Lena sat alone at a small coffee shop off base, wearing a simple hoodie and jeans. Her phone buzzed non-stop, but she ignored it. She stirred her coffee slowly, trying to quiet the noise in her mind. People were recognizing her now. A pair of young sailors at the counter whispered and nudged each other, stealing glances. One approached timidly. "Ma'am?" he asked, voice cracking. Are you the one from the photo?" She nodded. He saluted. "Thank you. My sister was one of the hostages. I didn't know." "Until now." Lena offered a faint smile. "You're welcome," she said. Back at Naval Command, Admiral Beckett watched the news unfold with mixed emotions. Part of him felt vindicated. Rennick had been caught, the breach closed, the damage repaired. But a larger part felt exposed. He'd made the call to suppress her actions, to sideline her, to protect the Navy's image. Now, that decision looked cowardly. He called a meeting with senior leadership. "She deserves public recognition," he said firmly, "and not just a medal behind closed doors." A general across the table scowled. "So we make her a martyr?" "No," Beckett said. "We make her a reminder." 1 week later, Lena was called back to D.C., this time not for interrogation, but for honor. The Pentagon was packed. Uniforms, suits, cameras. The Secretary of Defense took the podium. "In moments of crisis, we discover who we really are," he said. When Operation Fracture fell into chaos, it was Lena Morrison who held the line. When truth was hidden, it was her silence that preserved lives. And now, her voice returns not to boast, but to heal. He motioned her forward. Applause thundered as Lena walked to the stage, composed but unflinching. She wore her Navy uniform, this time clean, pressed, and adorned with the medal Beckett once left in a drawer. She didn't speak long. "I didn't act alone," she began. "I just acted when others froze. I did what I was trained to do. I didn't need recognition then, but I understand. Now some stories need to be told, so the next person doesn't suffer in silence." She paused. Pain can be hidden, but scars speak loud enough. The room fell silent. And the applause began again, louder, longer, deeper. Not for a soldier, for a symbol. That night, Lena walked through Arlington Cemetery alone, passing names etched in stone. Heroes, leaders, forgotten voices. She stopped. At one grave, Lt. Marcus Donnelly, the man she shielded with her body when the bullets flew. "I finally told them," she whispered, placing her fingers on the stone. "We didn't die for nothing." Behind her, a voice. "You never had to carry it all alone." It was Wallace. She turned, startled. "I thought you hated attention," she said. "I hate lies more." He handed her a folded envelope. "Declassified documents. Your own files. Thought you should see what they wrote about you." She hesitated. He added, "You deserve to know how the world finally sees you." In her apartment that night, Lena opened the envelope. Dozens of printed reports, transcripts, testimony. And at the top, a simple statement: Morrison acted with extraordinary valor, demonstrating technical brilliance, physical courage, and ethical fortitude. Her actions saved lives and exposed a deep internal betrayal. Her silence was not submission, but strength. She closed her eyes. After all this time, the truth was finally louder than the lies. But what surprised her most wasn't the praise. Was a handwritten note clipped to the last page. "We failed you. The Navy owes you more than words. If you ever want to teach, lead, or rewrite the rules, we'll follow." Beckett. Lena smiled for the first time in weeks. Not because she'd won, but because they had finally seen her. Not just as a codebreaker or a survivor, but as a voice no longer buried. The storm had passed, but Lena Morrison wasn't ready to disappear. 2 months after her story went public, she was flooded with invitations from think tanks, defense firms, even Hollywood producers wanting to tell her story. Most went unanswered. She wasn't interested in speeches or movie deals. She didn't need a red carpet dot. She needed impact dot, and not just symbolic dot at a round table at the Naval War College. Admiral Beckett stood before a panel of senior command, gesturing to a digital whiteboard titled Operation Mosaic, Future Intelligence Restructuring. "This isn't about rewriting history," he said. "It's about correcting our course." He clicked. Lena's photo appeared. She exposed the cracks in our system. We silenced her instead of listening. That ends now. I've asked her to return as a civilian strategist, independent and unrestricted, to help us rebuild this entire framework. A few generals shifted, uncomfortable. She's not an officer. She was an officer, Beckett snapped. And she bled for this country while others hid behind red tape. Silence, he continued. Morrison will operate with direct oversight only from my office. If she finds corruption, it gets reported. If she recommends policy, we implement. One older. Admiral cleared his throat. Won't this make her the most powerful civilian in naval intelligence? Beckett smiled. Exactly. Lena hesitated before accepting that her entire life had been about the mission coding, protecting, surviving. She'd never imagined sitting at a desk with a badge labeled Strategic Reform Officer. But when she walked into her new office overlooking the Potomac, she didn't feel like she was going back into the system. She felt like she was replacing it. One of her first acts was simple but radical. Open door days. Every 2 weeks, enlisted personnel could come speak directly to her. No rank barriers. No permission slips. Just truth. The first session was chaos. The second, quieter. By the fifth, word had spread. Lena Morrison listened. And more importantly, she acted. Meanwhile, Elias Rennick's trial began under federal scrutiny. Evidence piled against him: embezzled contracts, cyber terror activity, and his direct attempt to frame Morrison. When questioned by prosecutors, Rennick remained stoic until one line cut through. "You built a system on the lie that she was disposable." He cracked, if only slightly. "She wasn't disposable," he muttered. "She was dangerous, because she knew how deep it all went." The jury convicted him in less than 3 hours. 50 years without parole. On a quiet morning, Lena stood on the deck of the USS Harlan, one of the newest destroyers, and addressed the crew. Not in uniform, no medals. Just her story. "Every one of you has a voice," she told them. "Don't wait for scars before using it." When she stepped off, a young seaman ran up and whispered, "Ma'am, I want to be just like you." Lena turned, her eyes firm but kind. "No," she said. "Be better." The years ahead weren't easy. She clashed with admirals, rejected protocol, pushed for AI regulation, independent oversight, and whistleblower protections. She made enemies and loyal allies. Her scarred ribs still ached on cold mornings. But every time someone tried to push her aside, she reminded them, "If I can survive a sniper's bullet for this country, I can survive your opinion." And they backed down, one by one. 10 years later, Lena retired for good. No ceremony, no speeches, just a letter addressed to every intelligence recruit. "You've inherited a system built on trust. Protect it. Question it. Fix it when it breaks. Don't become invisible to survive. Stand up, even if your voice shakes." Lena Morrison, former analyst, fighter, rebuilder. Her office door stayed closed after that, but her legacy never did. A photo still hangs in the Naval War College hallway. Lena, in a dim-lit room, lifting her shirt not for shock, but for truth. Underneath, engraved in bronze, pain can be hidden, but scars speak loud enough.